what I do is I'm going to spotlight everybody that is in the talk, but so I want to welcome Amelia. We have Amelia, we have Ed Gordon, and then we also have Micah Cersei. I hope I pronounced that right? And I'm going to spotlight you guys. Give me a moment, and do it through here. Micah and got Amelia, and I need Ed. Where are you, Ed? There you are. Hello. All right, and let me add myself too, right? I gotta be in there. Or I guess you guys see me because I assume you see me. Okay. So let's do a quick round of introductions. So who are you each? Let's just start one at a time. And I'm gonna go with what's on my screen. Amelia, you want to do a quick introduction on yourself?
Hi, I'm Amelia Breton. During the day, I am an enterprise agile coach with JP Morgan Chase, and I also run the US coaching team for our product operating model transformation. So I hire lots of coaches. I'm also, on my off time, a coach, mentor, and trainer. Do I get to pick who I pass it to?
Yeah, please pass it to Ed.
I'm going to pass it to Ed.
There we go. She picked me. Hi, everyone. My name is Edward Gordon. I'm here in the San Francisco Bay Area. During my day hours, I am a support lead for Google, managing their internal ticketing platform. But where I really, where I just as much love putting my energy is paying it back to the community by being a part of the Job Hackers. We're an organization that's a nonprofit that offers free classes in Agile software development that prepares you to be able to take the Professional Scrum Master 1 certification, and is a full-on community that's all about giving those of us that are really looking for work a community and a support network that we can be able to turn to. All of it is community and volunteer supported.
And last but
not I am Mike.
Go ahead, Micah.
Micah, go ahead.
I'm Micah Cersei. I recently got a new job at Agile, or at Abbott Pharmaceuticals, helping spin up their in-house Agile process. And I'm on this panel because I developed a little process for me to find a new job and run through it this summer.
Mm-hmm. So when I came out, thank you, all of you, welcome, and basically, and unfortunately we don't have Scott, who is also another Agile coach, but hopefully he'll get the message and show up. But so I invited this panel to get a very, different, people who are invested in helping back to the community, those that are have been, working to support others. And also, get a lot of different, viewpoints. And especially, I think Micah is going to be particularly important of okay, there's these us crusty old folks that have been in there, we have our jobs, but what is it like to be on the market now? What's the challenges? And, just talk about all. This topic is near and dear to me, I suppose, because, I, not too long ago went through the same process. And then as well as, coach a lot of others where we get a lot of these questions like, where do I start? Mm-hmm. Where do I start becoming a Scrum Master and an Agile coach? So what I'm going to do is we're going to do about half an hour with the panel, and then I'm going to open it up. I'll take questions in the chat. So save your questions, write them down somewhere about, I would say, probably about 7:15, 7:20. Pacific. I'm gonna go looking in the chat and see what we got there. Okay. All right. So my first question for all of you, and feel free, anybody who wants to take it up first, is let's focus on the Scrum Master role first. Okay. What's the most important thing that a person needs to know when they're first starting out to become a Scrum Master? That to you individually, what's most important?
I'm happy to lead off with that question,
Please.
I'm very appreciative of being thought of as a crusty old folk. I've never been introduced to that. It's really interesting where we are as Scrum Masters in an organization, particularly because we have something that we are advancing the cause of in the entire organization just as much as what we are doing with our individual team. And so this aspect of servant leadership that you find is something that we have to bear in mind, particularly because there are going to be points where we run into opposition. And there's a lot of, I think back to, it's a little bit like an inverted Spider-Man. You have all of the responsibility and none of the power. But even more so, when we're first coming in as Scrum Masters, we've read all of the Agile principles, we've read the Scrum Guide, and what we really have to remember when we first enter our Scrum Master role is that whatever team that we're working with, we have to understand how they work as people first before we try and be able to bring in any kind of new process or any kind of new ways to work with things. Because what we really find, we've brought this up in programs and job hackers that we've talked about this sense of adapted Scrum. But what the kind of dirty truth is, you're never going to find something strictly working by the Scrum Guide, or you're never going to find this in a book. Because everything will always be context dependent, and everything is also going to be dependent on the people that you're individually working with.
Yeah, what I love about that is really bringing in that this is about the humans, not the process, right? And it's really about tapping into what do you know as a person that you're going to bring to the role of Scrum Master? And what are you going to bring to that role with your team? So, for example, I spent years working for a nonprofit, and we couldn't afford to hire Scrum Masters. So we had to build them. And the most successful Scrum Master I've ever mentored to this day was a wonderful young woman who was part of our customer service department. And she had that mindset of service. And her goal was to help people and to remove barriers and just be sort of the grease in the process. And that was the amazing skill that really made her a great Scrum Master. So it, don't get caught up so much in it being about the certification or about Scrum itself. It's really about the humans.
Yeah, I agree with everything they said. I like the phrase "be the grease." That's good. I'm going to use that. Yeah, for me, it's read all the books, learn the process, and then forget it. And I'm looking for a good metaphor, but it's like just pretend you're hosting a party. Like make sure everybody's doing well, feeling good. Who do they need to talk to? Who would it be useful to introduce them to? What conversations would be useful to have in the space? And let go of the process and let whatever you've learned about the process inform how you're interacting with the people, but it's all about the people.
That's great. So I think in a way, I think especially Amelia's answer. So the question that kind of comes to mind for me is sort of like, I think we read the books, we understand what it is, and there's this certain thing about this human aspect. And I think sometimes there's a little bit like Scrum Masters get sold a bill of goods and say, like, you get a certification, you're going to go get this job, you're going to run these ceremonies, and the next thing you know, you as Ed talks about, you run into the context, right? So in essence, like, sometimes I wonder if a Scrum Master, not to get really negative really quickly, but there's a little bit of buyer's remorse in a way, right? I mean, or just simply like, what do you suggest that a Scrum Master be aware of to gear them up for this role, that they're not being told by their certifications or anything like that?
I can start this one.
Okay.
And it's hard. That it's emotionally hard, that it can be physically hard. You know, you are holding a lot of people's baggage that's not your own.
Mm.
And you need to really figure out and practice, how are you going to deal with that and stay mentally and emotionally healthy when you're standing in the fire of, you know, what can be conflict.
Beautiful.
Yeah. To follow up with that, and our agile, our chief agile officer for job hackers makes this point really readily when we're doing the class. One of the closest roles you can be able to approximate to being a Scrum Master or to being an Agile coach is to being a parent, or maybe a really cool uncle. But the idea that you're not just someone that is walking in and cleaning up every mess. The idea is that you're there to instill the responsibility and understand the interactions of each individual and each individual component, whether that is in the structure as a whole around them to keep your team protected, or working with your team themselves so that they can be able to not only protect, but progress as a collective unit as they're moving forward. Far too often you will run into times where there's upper levels of leadership that are more focused on a particular metric, which is you need to account for whether or not that's actually productive towards your actual team and what they're currently creating.
I would also add in there that worst case scenario is management wants you to do agile to fix the problems that they don't want to actually face. And so for me, a lot of it starts with how invested is leadership in actually changing, and am I swimming against the current of the culture or with it? And that makes a huge difference right off the bat in what's available, how much baggage, to Amelia's point, I'm going to have to be carrying. Yeah, so that would be my first thing, is pick where you're going to work judiciously. Spend time in the interview process interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you, and see if it's a good fit. If you like it, like going back to that people thing, do you like your manager? Does it feel like a good fit? Are they walking the walk as best as you can tell, and not just wanting to, oh, go be agile, that'll solve everything for us, and then it's up to you to deal with the problems.
That brings up for me a quote from my Scrum Master class back in 2005, 2006, which Gabrielle Banfield said, "Scrum will not solve your problems, but it will shine a giant magnifying glass on where they are so that you can solve them." And people get nervous when you show that, magnifying glass.
Yeah. When you start unearthing the skeletons.
Oh my gosh.
Looking where they don't want to look, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So as a follow-up to that question, it's sort of like, first, and this will be the last Scrum Master question, then we'll switch to the Agile Coach role. What do you suggest, that a new Scrum Master acquire in terms of a skill or a perspective or something that will support them in this journey as they are being servant leaders, supporting other people? And what do you think is a key thing they should have in their bag?
Only one. Art.
No, go ahead. If you got one, that's great.
Well, let's have Micah go first.
Micah go first, because I keep talking.
Yeah.
I'll speak from my experience. It's my meditation practice, because it is a role where I am being the grease, which means I am putting myself in the friction points on purpose to try to resolve them. It's whatever I need to do to come back to me at the end of the day and emotionally unplug, recharge, collect myself. That's meditation usually for me.
Great. Ed?
Yeah, I would say that internally, meditation is very important, or mindfulness, however you go about practicing that. But I would say externally, when you are viewing and interacting with others, it's best to be able to understand what their motivations are.
Mm.
So not only understanding that things, what the differences are between extrinsic and intrinsic motivations are, but look into things like SCARF, which I would appreciate if someone could be able to include in the chat there. But being able to give a general breakdown of, are they interested in status? Are they interested in, do they have anxiety or avoidance towards what is going on with them, towards, you know, a boss or towards another figure in the organization? Understand why people want to take the steps that they want to take, because there was a key statistic that, God, I think it's about 4 in 10, at least in America, office workers are actively engaged in doing worse work for their company, or causing a negative output.
Mm-hmm.
The main reason why we look in, why those things can happen, is when people don't feel that they are being treated fairly, or that they have ownership in the process that they're giving. So find ways to give ownership, even if it's not a way of, you know, bumping someone's salary, because that's not what we're here for, or even for recommending, but for giving people a sense that they have autonomy, and that they are in a fair situation.
Yeah. Yeah, for anybody that doesn't know, I believe the SCARF model comes from David Rock's Neuro Leadership. I think that's the right source, right? Feel free to look that up. Amelia, any comment from you?
Yeah, 100% both of those, especially the self-care aspect. But I'll add another one, which is curiosity.
Mm.
And really being able to cultivate your curiosity over your judgment. So being able to, when something happens, instead of judging or going into, you know, how it is wrong, being curious about, what might be causing that? What might their motivation for that be? Just so really just that curiosity.
Yeah. And what's going on with you? And so that's a really, you know, that's a really important quality that whoops, sorry about that. That natural curiosity. That leads me to my next question. I think, Amelia, you're probably, you know, giving it up for you first. It's sort of like, so a very common question that we get as Agile coaches, this is the classic, almost dreaded for me, is, I'm not a Scrum, well, we're going to talk about, feel free to add for the Scrum Master side of it, but the Agile coach is always like, I want to be an Agile coach. How do I get that experience? They're asking for 5 years. They're asking for 20 years of experience, which is the classic joke, right? Considering that the manifesto was written 20 years ago, right? So they want like 10 years of experience. How do I begin into this? How do I break in, you know, with no experience, so to speak?
Well, so the first thing I'll talk about is, if you're a Scrum Master, you are an Agile coach as part of your role. And so it's about cultivating the coaching pieces of that. So, you know, getting to real good understanding and education around professional coaching, mentoring, particularly mentoring other Scrum Masters, facilitation, going from facilitating your team ceremonies to facilitating teams of team ceremonies and that kinds of things. Training, you know, as a Scrum Master, we're constantly doing little bites of training. Well, who might you give that bite of training to beyond your team? You know, what if you took a group of product owners and gave them some of those good bites about writing good user stories? And it's really about just moving into that, cultivating Agile in the organization beyond the team. And you can do that in the role you stand in right now. I have a really strong opinion that you cannot be an Agile coach until you've stood in the fire and you've experienced that already. But you can get that experience, you know, as a Scrum Master, as a Kanban facilitator, as a team member, as a product owner.
And what does it mean? And this goes for all, and feel free to continue on that particular question. The rest of you is like, what does it mean to stand in the fire, right? I think that's a really important thing to understand.
I can continue, but I don't want to hog this.
Yeah. I was going to circle back to the original question and take it from the perspective of someone that is more of a Scrum Master as opposed to an Agile coach, someone who is read the Scrum guide but hasn't necessarily had the experiences. I don't know Micah's background, we haven't talked before just this moment, but this might sound familiar to him. One of the key things that I've seen with all the people that have gone through our program is that they will understand they will understand Scrum when they stop reading and they start actively practicing it in their daily life. We don't need to be part of a company or an organization to be able to value and prioritize the items and actions that we take in our normal life. Nor do we need it to be able to not only estimate effort, but then be able to take feedback in rapid cycles and be able to incorporate that to be able to make new estimations as we move through. And not only does that cultivate a mindset, but that's what you're doing in your daily work. So whether you are a Scrum Master or not, and in addition, when it comes to getting into the actual job hunting process, I would want, and I've spoken with recruiters and hiring managers, they're very much more interested when you're speaking to them, not that you have a certification, and I think we'll get into this question later on, but that you've actively practiced what it is that you are representing yourself as. So I'll be able to speak a little bit more to that later.
Yeah, so let's pause on that, because I'm going to come back to the practice question. That's key to me too. All right, Micah, anything to add?
Yeah, I'm going to speak more directly to the job hunt process, because if you're coming to this in your own time, you're probably familiar enough with Agile. Lie on your resume, put whatever credentials you need to get, because it's all about, Amelia's shaking her head, and I totally know, I want to hear about it.
Present a strategic.
But here's the caveat. Sorry, say that again, Edward?
Present a strategic truth.
Yeah, strategic.
We'll talk about that later also.
I like that. I like that.
I like this.
Okay.
I like this. All right.
So there's two reasons I say lie, and I mean that really specifically with a big asterisk and a caveat. One, you're in the job hunt process, you're trying to get past automated resume scanners. So you put down criteria that will get you past that. Your goal, my goal when I was job hunting, was to get interviews with actual people. Because then the second thing is actually going to come into play is, like Edward said, you have to walk it, like you own it, you embody it. And that's what you're bringing to the interview. So to me, it's lie on the resume, put down whatever credentials you need to get past the automated thing. And then the very first thing I said when I got in my interviews is, I don't have my Scrum Master certification. I did that to get past the resume, but here's what I do have. 8 years of running an accelerator, leading Agile transformation at my last firm. And the conversation that came from that was fully embodied, and we were in conversation at that point, and that was my goal, to get to talk to somebody.
Interesting strategy. Yeah. Any response to that?
Oh, that like hit me really hard as somebody who hires Scrum Masters and Agile coaches. Because I would probably not hire somebody that did that. Because a very important value within my team and within a lot of the teams I've been a part of is transparency and respect. Now, I also may be a rare hiring manager. I read every single resume that comes in, even from the automated systems. So for example, I have an open position right now in the Bay Area. I have had about 150 applicants, some with credentials, some without. I don't care what letters you have behind your name. I care about what you've done. Only probably 6 have made it to interview stage. And we've extended 2 offers.
So I anything else there, Amelia? So yeah, so
it's just, to me, it's really important to be transparent and have respect. Now, don't undersell yourself.
Yeah.
So that's really important. But don't tell me you have a cert you don't have.
Yeah, I'm holding my tongue at the moment until we get to other questions related to this week. So if we want to dig in on this now, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I want to come back to the practice. But I think Micah is speaking for me. He's speaking down a very interesting question, something I've thought about as well, which is, how do we leverage all those job postings to our advantage in some way, right? You go onto LinkedIn, you go to Indeed, you go to these sites. There's a zillion, like, how do I find opportunities, for instance? Do you rely on networking? like word of mouth, those kind of things? Or do you go to the job sites? What are the trade-offs? Any advice in that area?
We can look at our job search just the same way that we look at a product. And in that same way, we should identify and test the different approaches that we have and how we are putting ourselves out there, both in the amount of effort that it takes to be able to put forward, as well as the value that we estimate will come back from those outcomes. We could, I may be super ecstatic about the resume that I've written, but there's absolutely no value to a resume that's written and hasn't been put out into the world. I could solely be submitting that resume with no adjustments or no edits to every single role that shows up on LinkedIn and Indeed and Dice and Glassdoor, so on and so forth. But the average percentage of receiving a first interview contact solely, or rather the average percentage of receiving a job going through solely working through job portals is 3% in the 90-day period. That was the last time that I saw a study on that. There might be updated studies that are in that area, but what it really is a matter of is, just like everything else we've talked about, there is a context that we are working within. And in addition, so that you have the opportunity, hey, Scott, welcome. There's an opportunity that we have to be able to test and retest and even A/B test our resumes, to be able to see what the interaction is with, and to be able to see what recruiters are calling us back and what conversations we have. And one of the key things that Amelia said, she looked at 150 resumes, 6 got to an interview stage. As job seekers, it is an incredibly disadvantageous position that we are in, that recruiters are in, and that hiring managers are in, all at the same time. And the way that we have to tackle it, as much as it's a grind to do, is if you put out 200 resumes into the world over the course of 3 to 4 weeks, not even to jobs you are looking to actually apply to, or to jobs you would apply to, but not necessarily your dream job, you are still narrowing the focus and understanding how to be able to work your way within that system, so that you can be able to see there's a difference between receiving 5 interviews in a week and 20 interviews in a week.
Interesting.
Cool. So, yeah, we should be A/B testing our resumes, but it's more like multivariate testing at that point, because there's so much content on our resume. And if you think about it from an experiment design standpoint, an experiment should have as few factors changed as possible to really understand what really is improving and what's not. Otherwise, we have a lot of data, and we're going to have to build an AI platform just to know what changed on a resume and help us understand what it is that we should have on a resume. So I actually recommend something entirely different, which is you can take snippets of your resume and just post them on LinkedIn, right? You change up the wording so that it sounds natural. But then you can test a single element of your resume in a way where you can actually measure like how many people saw it and then how many people engaged. That's a simple way to do it. And then you have like a month's worth of posts, right? Or a year, depending on how you look at it. But you can then test a bunch of different things. So you have more power in that experimentation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That also really helps you. So I fully admit to LinkedIn and internet, Google stalking of people who've applied. So like the very first thing I do is I go to LinkedIn when I look at your resume and I see what's there, and what have you posted? What are you saying? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Who do I know that might know you?
I think my approach was very broad. I was going for a numbers game, because that 3% was about in line with what I was getting back. But I was putting out probably 75 resumes a week. I think I used Resume Worded. Any one of the platforms, they all have resume scanning software that they give you free or get the paid. I opted for the paid because it gives you really specific feedback. And then again, it goes back to that, how, for me, my perspective was, how is my resume getting through or getting blocked at that scanning step? So if I can grease the scanning step, and then my goal was to get to interviews with people, because that's where I would know if I want to work with them. And that's where I work best, was with people. Like I'm good like that. That's how I like to relate. So it was simply, how can I get past as many of these scanning software or automated scans as possible? So I used the scanning software to help me optimize for that, and then set up searches in the various boards and just spammed everything. I might be getting into your next question a bit, but
Sure.
applied to as many things as I could. And I tweaked it a little bit in the first couple of weeks, but once I was getting good replies, I was fine. And that took 2 or 3 weeks, maybe.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing is it's sort of like almost you all have a slightly different approach toward being agile at the job search itself, right?
Amazing.
Right?
Amazing that there would be a different approach to Agile from every single individual person.
I'm different people, because in a way, I think part of what Mike, I admire your kind of like, there is a sort of shrewdness to what you're doing, right? That is not, it to me, it's like you're being honest when you're actually in the room with the person and
Absolutely.
engaging with them, right?
Yes,
Right.
that's
So
imperative.
Yeah. So I think in a way, that's really fascinating. I mean, it's sort of like, so, and in a way, there's a subtext here that I'm kind of hearing is, can you guys speak about knowing your strength? There's something about, I'm getting something about like, what about that in doing this whole process? How does that feed into this whole thing about trying to get a job? Whether as an Agile coach or as a Scrum Master. And Scott, welcome. So glad you were able to make it. Feel free to do a quick, like 2-second intro of yourself if you'd like.
Oh yeah, no, it's my fault. I didn't have this on the calendar and I double booked, so I'm speaking at 2 meetups tonight.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm an Agile coach at Ford Motor Company. I'm coaching executives right now, and then I also run the Agile Career Accelerator, where I help people advance their career with up to 3x more pay in record time, and that record is currently 33 days.
Wow.
And that was to land his first Scrum Master role with no prior experience. So pretty stoked about that. And he got $35,000 increase over what he was making before as a tech support guy. So pretty excited.
So I kind of going back to this question I just had, like, how, somebody like that, like, how do you express your quality in that kind of situation, or how does that even play a role in this whole thing, right?
Yeah, so I'm curious to hear what Amelia, Micah, and Edward, their thoughts are, because the word you used was strengths. I have some thoughts there, but I'll save mine. I don't know.
I'll go. So when I started my process, my goal was to get 5 interviews, because I hadn't interviewed in a number of years. I'd been at my last gig for a long time. And I didn't know what the landscape was out there. And in those first 3 interviews, really, I realized how articulate I was able to speak to very specific questions they were posing. And it helped me in that interview process, is where I formed my clear sense of what I can actually bring to the table. And I was, I don't know, 30% accurate before those conversations. Like I was pretty far off base in both how I was feeling about it and like what I could talk to and say confidently. But in those conversations, it got really clear. And then I updated my resume and things got a lot more aligned really quick by doing it.
Anyone else?
Well, it's interesting because the strengths that we look at, for example, I recognize that I am not someone at this time where I can regularly put out content on a LinkedIn post for a month straight, because I find that I need to craft every single message and I have a strong feeling about that. I recognize that that's an area where I have to improve, but I also recognize that I still have the strength of a Scrum Master in the work that I do, primarily with building systems and larger, organizations and processes that I can be able to lead other people through to be able to engage in their own strengths.
Mhm.
So it can be a challenge when it's reliant on us being very public people or being very public out on the internet world, and putting our personal branding out there, when some of us are perhaps more introverted or otherwise focused. So we need to be able to find other ways to be able to focus on those strengths. The way that I do so is I not only am networking with people individually by reaching out to them, which has more of a cold contact aspect to it, or through meetups but I will go to other people's meetups. And often people the way that they present their meetups is they will just give a presentation and they won't pay attention in the chat. They won't pay attention in the conversation. And that is an opportunity for you to be able to ask or answer people's questions that they might have that go completely unrecognized during the course of a fireside chat or something similar, where you are then able to start opening up conversations with people on that one-to-one basis, as opposed to a wider spread audience.
Using meetups as a way to kind of, and what I'm hearing is to prepare for the interview in a way, and then also kind of think differently is kind of what I'm hearing from you. Ed, do I have it right?
Not only prepare for the interview, but prepare for how you are going to present yourself in that interview.
Yeah.
Or to find more interviews.
Yeah. So for me, I'll be 100% honest. The last time I wrote a resume was 2016. My superpower and my strength is I know a person. So I talk to lots of people and lots of Agilists and help pretty much anybody who's willing or needs something. And so every job I've gotten has been from I know somebody, or somebody I know knows somebody. My current position, I spent 3 months dodging the recruiter on LinkedIn. So I was like, no, I'm happy. I'm happy with my thing. I'm all good. And then there was a day where I was annoyed at work. I was like, fine, I'll talk to you. I'm not going to actually leave, but it's when you know people refer you to people, or we need somebody who does this. That's, hey, doesn't Ed do that job hackers thing? Maybe he'd be a great person to come in and mentor some new Scrum Masters.
Yeah, and to your point, Amelia and I are close friends. I'm friends with a lot of you. I know Philip, Richiga, Hoy, Olaf, and I believe we've met before. Probably a bunch of you who are off camera. Your face is on mute, by the way. What's going on here behind the scenes is, and this is why I said in the comment, like, stop applying altogether. People come to me and they're like, I've been applying to like 100 jobs a day. Well, they say, Scott, it's not working. And I tell them that the reason it's not working is because by applying for jobs on job boards or even on LinkedIn, you're only seeing 20% of the opportunities that are out there. And you know what? Why did those opportunities make it to those job boards? Well, half the time it's because no one wanted them. They couldn't find them earlier. The truth is 80% of opportunities never make it to the job board because of the exact reason Amelia said, like, people know about them way beforehand. So you have to build relationships with people. And the best way to build a relationship with someone is not to cold message them and say, hey, I'm looking for an opportunity. Do you know anything? They're not going to refer you. They don't know you.
I'm also going to mention that 20% of those are going to job boards, and there are enough agencies out there that they're going to firsthand before those agencies are posting them to job boards, that if you can shortcut that by being able to find who the recruiters are at those agencies and it's not unheard of to contact a company like JP Morgan Chase or somewhere else and be able to reach out to their HR department and say, hey, what agency do you work with? The worst that you're going to hear from them is, I'm not going to give you that information. But if you form a connection, you form a conversation, and you say, hey, you work with this agency, and what's your name? And we've had a great conversation. Could you introduce me to this recruiter that's at that agency? You've now shortcut the entire time that it takes for that to be able to get to the job board in the first place.
So what kind of just to kind of follow up on that, I mean, I think I'm going to ask two more questions and I'm going to turn it over to, we'll pick questions from the crowd, you know, but I think for me, the biggest question is, how do we begin networking? What's the best way to do it? I think there was some mention of doing, you know, the obvious is to show up to a meetup like BLN and check out the talk on breaking into the business, right? What better way to do it than this? I mean, it's so much wisdom that we've gotten already. Any suggestions there?
Oh, there are community organizations like the Job Hackers that are, no, we offer free classes, a full network of community. So that is one aspect that you could take. You could go with the boot camp route, whether it's paid, whether it's free nonprofit, like what we offer. But more so when you're reaching out to someone that you're interested in, or you've identified someone that you're interested in that you don't have a connection with, when you make that first connection to whoever you're reaching out to, it's not about, as Scott was saying, you don't just ask, hey, I need a job. What you do is you form a connection with them. I mean, it sounds almost like I'm talking down when I say that, but you figure out something that you can be of value to them, that you can be able to give them, even if it's just a friendly hello, and be able to say, hey, I want to be able to just present this to you, see if we get along, see if this is a good connection, and leave it there. And then come back to them maybe a week later and say, hey, I saw that you know this person. Do you think that they would be interested in some of the things that we've been talking about? And I'm not saying that it's 1, 2, 3. I'm saying that just over time, you form a connection with someone, and that leads to the people that you want to be able to speak with, because you'll want to speak with the people you're talking to at the same time.
Yeah.
Well,
the human
you know,
connection.
right things to say, it can be 1, 2, 3, right? Maybe 3 days time. And then you're in, and then the next thing you know, you're hired because you've mastered the skills that get you found and get you hired, because you know exactly what to say, right? The truth is that 95% of what we could say is ineffective. And I know, because I spent years perfecting the strategies that I teach, right? There's a formula to it. But to Edward's point, part of that formula is connection, right? And providing value.
Beautiful. Amelia or Micah, any comments from either of you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Agilists in general, we tend to be pretty friendly people. I mean, if someone messages me on LinkedIn and has an Agile question or wants to talk about some cool Agile thing, or something I've posted, or something somebody else has posted, or talk about why Hui is wrong, I will always message you and start a conversation. Or if you need help with something, I mean, and I think I found that to be really true with other Agilists, even ones who I've reached out cold. Now, if I think you're going to try and sell me something, I'll ignore you. So if in that reach out message, it has something Agile that sounds interesting, then I'm going to talk to you.
I love everything everybody's saying. And I would offer that my job hunt, I had a much shorter time frame, and I hadn't spent a lot of time cultivating my network. So my approach was centered around getting on the boards, not because I expected the boards to return anything to me, but by being active there, I got on recruiters' radars. And that's where all of my interviews came from. I don't know if I got a single one directly from applying through the boards, but getting on a recruiter's radar has got me a lot of interviews and several good ones.
I
Interesting.
say one thing real quick about recruiters, which is be careful who your recruiter is. Like choose them
Agreed.
wisely.
Mhm.
You don't want some recruiter that is a mostly automated body shop that's just about like cold sending you resume, job offers, you want somebody who you know is going to represent you well to that hiring manager and that hiring company.
Well, and to that point, right? Because there's two things that I tell people when they come to me for coaching. The first, of course, stop applying. The second one is stop going for recruiters. Recruiters don't have your best interest in mind, and they're not good salespeople. So if you're someone who doesn't have the experience, if you don't have the 5 to 10 years of experience that every agile position seems to be asking for these days, then you're not going to go far with recruiters.
It depends. I've known some recruiters who are really good, but it's not the guy who just cold sends you a random job listing, right?
So I'm going to interrupt here because like it's really interesting watching this because it's sort of like, hey, what a better example of the Agile community. 4 different people, 3.5 different opinions, right? 3.5 different approaches, and it just tells you like what's possible. And and we kind of way what I'm hearing is we have to choose the best approach that suits us, right? Okay, so I'm going to go back to, I know this is a dying question, and I know we asked it about the Agile coaches, but I'm going to put your feet to the fire here, right? The Scrum Master's dying question is, how do I get started? And we talked about practice. That word practice came up. So how does practice matter? Because like, for instance, when I'm coming out, I have no experience in the field. I've never delivered a piece of software in my life. I don't know what code looks like, right? I don't have this background. Like my feet have not been scorched yet. My feet are still relatively pristine. That's not been in the fire. So what do you guys suggest that a brand new, let's say I just got my CSM, I got my PSM1, and I need some mileage somewhere or need to do something to help me. Where do I start so I can nail that job, right?
Well, Hui, let me turn that right back on you to ask you a question, which is what lights a fire under you when you're not looking for a job? What is it that you came to? Do you like to cook? Do you like to boulder? Do you like to hike? What is that you like to do? Because that immediate answer then gives me some fodder to be able to work off of, because I need to understand who you are as a person first. So start with your hypothetical. What is that you like to do?
So let's say I'm a musician. Right?
You're a musician.
Okay, for instance.
Do you perform in large concerts, and do you put those together, or do you work with other individuals to do so?
So we had one gentleman that was in like an event organizer, right? I've interviewed, I've mentored some people, let's say they're coming from the hotel industry, So yes. How do I make that transition, right?
I think that you already, when you're in a position where you're in operations, where you are looking at the larger scope of what you're working in, you already start to have a sense of what this difference is between what's being waterfall and what's being agile. I've spoken with people that are on here today that are live event organizers, that it's a perfect transition between the experience that they need to be a Scrum Master at the very least, if not an Agile Coach, because things rapidly change and priorities rapidly shift because you have multiple different kinds of stakeholders. You are doing the calculations, not just in your head, but on paper, about how the value of something and the priorities of something changes from moment to moment. And it's not just because it's something that's on a Gantt chart or has a particular time window where you need to be able to keep in mind, because you really want to be able, you're putting your heart into putting this show together. For the example that's one example of, for more of an event organizer. For a musician, I'm going to step back right there if anyone wants to be able to do it, or if someone else has a different take.
I mean, musician is just a scenario in particular, right? I've yet to run into a musician making the switch, but I'm sure it'll happen sooner or later, right? What do the rest of you guys think? Like in terms of like, how do I show up as a, or what is it that I need to do to land my first Scrum Master role? Given what I have and what what does practice matter in any of this too?
So I have an opinion here, and it's probably not the best one, which is you have to be a member of a high performing team to understand what that is.
Mm.
And it doesn't matter what that team is,
Mhm.
right? It could be a volunteer team at, somewhere you would volunteer anyways. It could be, a Boy Scout troop. It could be anything.
Mhm.
It could be, I know a general contractor who uses Kanban, right? Any place where you can be a member of a team, you can start working those Scrum Master skills. And once you've been a member of 1 or 2 or 3 teams, no
Mhm.
matter what your current industry is, then you've been a Scrum Master. And it's easier to have that experience. It's make the Scrum Master whole in whatever it is you're already doing. It's much easier.
Yeah. And I'm not sure what's gone on in his little brain, but I've had people come to me, Scott, I'm a nurse. How do I break into Scrum? Right. I've helped teachers. My first person who was successful came over from nursing. I've helped a teacher become a Scrum Master. I've helped the tech support guy. I've helped a guy who was in manufacturing because he skipped over the Scrum Master and just went to Agile Coach. Right. I became an Agile Coach with no prior experience and no certifications, and this is the system that I teach. But a piece of that is lying on your resume. No, I'm joking. No, I don't teach that at all. In fact, that's one of the first things I recommend people not to do. But you have to have a resume that can spotlight who you are and what you've accomplished in your career, no matter where you're coming from. I have that. It's called the magnetic resume. So feel free to reach out if you're interested in that. But part of it is, one, you have to speak the language of Agile, right? What I find is a lot of people are actually speaking the language of Scrum. That's too common. You have to stand out. Everyone's talking about being a servant leader and facilitating Agile ceremonies. No hiring leader really cares about that, right? They care about how well you can speak that language of Agile. And then again, it's finding the organizations that are hiring for aptitude and attitude as opposed to experience, which most people don't have a list like I do of organizations that are ready and willing to hire people that don't have that experience. Make sense? Micah, did you have some thoughts here?
Yeah, I was thinking I have 12 years in doing software development, project management, and Scrum Master. So I can't speak from my experience how I do this. And I was trying to think what advice I would give a friend if they were coming to me. I love what Scott said about places that will hire based on aptitude. And something Amelia said also I really liked that I forgot now though. Yeah, I don't have much to add on this one.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Yeah.
I think that's very much true. It's sort of like to bottom line some of this. It's sort of like knowing what we're good at, looking at the experiences we've had, because we're not coming into this like babies, right? Where there's absolutely zero experience. We're coming into this with some sort of life experience. You would have already done things. And how do we interpret what we're doing into something that is appealing to somebody like a hiring manager, right? I think we all agree on that. All right, great. All right. So I tried to turn the screws on you guys as much as I could. Now it's the audience's turn. And I have my screen up ready for you. And I'm going to welcome anybody that has a question or comment. Feel free to use I think it's in the reactions. Raise your hand, or I forget where that is. I think it's is it in the chat? Yeah, just raise your hand. I'm going to go with Anne first. So go ahead and let me stop the spotlighting here. And then, but Anne, you go ahead, please. And
Okay. So my question is when you go to interview, it's a two-way process. So what I'm curious to learn as a potential Scrum Master in, let's say, a particular department is what is that environment for Scrum? You know, what type of Scrum do they have? I'm trying to look for a good match. I currently work with hybrid Scrum. So what kind of question, what's a smart question to ask the interviewer in order to kind of learn more about Agile principles, practices, Scrum, in a thoughtful and caring way? That's the information I want to get, but I'm not sure how to frame the question.
panelists.
I have a thought. I would say there isn't a magic question. It's going back to first principles of treat them like a person. If you're sitting down next to somebody at a potluck at a friend's house, what are you talking about? Ask them about the job, the structure, and get a vibe. For me, it was getting a vibe for how they comport themselves. Like, do I want to work with them? Do I feel they're being congruent and honest, representing themselves and the company and where it's at? That's really all I can offer there.
I tend to ask a variation of a single question, which is, so what are you looking to do? But tell me without using the word Agile or Scrum.
I'm saying, okay, that's good. Thank you. And Micah, you were helpful too. Thank you.
I was just going to say that the question that I generally find that's better to flip on the head when you're speaking with particularly someone that's the hiring manager is if you had a magic wand to be able to fix, or rather, you know, what's the problem that you want to be able to remove? And then when you ask them that question and they give a sense, you know, a high level sense of this is the problem that we're trying to deal with right now, the next question you ask is, why do you have that problem? Why is that still an issue? Because the first things of seeing how they respond to that, whether it's that they become defensive or that they start to interrogate that as an actual question and something that they can be able to work back and forth with you on, can give you a sense of who that level of management and then whether you're going to be working with someone who is collaborative versus someone that might be more of an opposition.
That's also true. It'd be interesting. It gets back to Micah and the vibe when you ask that type of question. So thank you. Thanks everybody. Yeah.
I was gonna throw my thoughts in here too, which, as you know, are different.
Sorry, they are.
Yeah,
Different.
I'm a weirdo. It's all good, but it gets you hired, so more power to it. And I'm all for staying in the problem space as much as possible, but I have to understand that at the end of the day, I'm there to demonstrate that I am able to take them to their ideal future, right? A lot of questions centered about the past and history, they're trying to be forensic questions. I don't care about forensic. I care that we solve the problem. So, you know, my coaching philosophy is ask future-oriented questions. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that alone gets you hired, but instead of asking like, why is it still this way? Ask, what haven't you tried?
Yeah, you can turn it. I mean, you can easily flip it, right? Into how far have you come? What do you want to do in the future? Where are you at? There's a lot of, that's a good avenue also.
Yeah.
I
And
like
of course, I'm a fan of asking as many possible questions as I can. The more you ask them and the more comfortable you are asking them questions and having a dialogue, like the ideal not being where they ask questions you answer, it should be a dialogue. The
Mhm.
more questions you ask, though, the more data you're going to have upon which you can base your decision.
It gets
Just
back to Amelia mentioning curiosity too.
Hmm.
It's a good fit.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then there's always the trick question or route. Ask them trick questions like, how involved is the project manager? How much time equals one story point? Things like that. We
Oh
can
my God.
we can laugh at those, right? But to even answer questions like that pretty much confirms that there is a dysfunction and you probably don't want to work for this organization.
No, thank you, everybody. It's very helpful. Appreciate it.
Amelia, you want to throw your 2 cents in here?
Oh, I was just adding, I like dysfunctional organizations. If we didn't have them, we wouldn't have jobs.
That's a very key point, right? If it
If
was
you're
easy,
comfortable.
would it be worth doing?
I don't know if I would put a first-time Scrum Master through the ringer, though.
No, probably not. But there's some coachy folks here too.
For sure.
Sure.
Now, and the funny thing is, I know very good coaches who've been out of work for a year and a half.
Wow.
So, like, these are the skills to master. They're going to serve you for the rest of your career. It's worth even investing in those skills, right? As a person who needed to change my hose spigot the other week, like I tried to do that myself. What did I end up with? The hose still didn't work and I had a big hole in the wall and I was staring at my problem, which I thought was, well, the hose spigot is soldered onto the pipe. 6 hours later, the plumber came out and he's like, all you needed to do was replace this little handle here. And, you know, hire a professional, right?
Yeah.
Get you there faster with less headache.
Yeah, great metaphor. All right, the last question I'm going to pass to Ruchika. You said you had a question?
I have more comments than questions, if that's okay.
Sure, feel free to share. What was your particular comment? And
So I feel that getting into interviews, there's a lot about resonating with the interviewers as well. So being in the similar energy space and empathizing with the interviewer and, well, asking questions to the interviewer is one thing, but also they're here because they have a pain point. Feel that and be able to say, well, okay, so you started on an agile transformation journey. Congratulations. So this is someone in pain. Try being there. To be that person who's now looking for someone who will just come in and, you know, take it on and help resolve these things so they can get over this. And helping and resonating with them to say, I can imagine how tough that may have been, the problem that you're trying to solve, and congratulate them on the progress they've made. I think it's a great rapport.
So,
and then automatically.
So yeah, just wrap it, make it quick.
Okay. Okay, no, go.
Okay, so the question is, I'm going to turn around and turn it into a question. So resonating, how do we resonate, especially in the case of an interview, right? So Scott, all of you spoke about like, what questions can I ask? Can I ask the trick question? How many story points is a point? How many days? Things like that. What's your biggest problem? You know, give me your biggest pain point, common, you know, but those are kind of, they're trick, right? So
yeah, it was a joke, but
I know, but there's some truth into it because I think there are some people who will go through like resources online. They'll say, what's the question I got to ask? Right. But how do we bring ourselves in any tips there in bringing our real selves in a way that creates that? You guys mentioned, all of you have mentioned in some way, one way or another, that there's the human side of things. And how do we create that connection? Tough question there.
Oh, I know my answer.
Actually,
let's have you go first this time, Scott.
I could go because he spoke.
you spoke
All right,
first. Go for it.
Can you resonate with someone you don't even know? 100%. You want to know how I do it? Did anyone resonate with me when I told that story of replacing my hose spigot, my home repair? Raise your hand if you resonated with me, right? We
Who owns a
cannot
home in this day
resonate.
and age?
Say again?
Who owns a home in this day and age?
Who owns a home? Yeah.
People in
Well,
Detroit.
who lives in, yeah, I'm in Detroit, for those who didn't know, Motor City. But yeah, like we want to resonate with hiring leaders. We want to resonate with people that we want to refer opportunities to us. And the way we do that isn't by reading their mind and understanding their perfect vision of what Agile looks like at their organization, right? Because that's just not possible. I mean, I don't have a magic ball. I have a magic 8-ball. That's about as close as I can get to magic. But simple stories like that, nothing fancy, just relate it to Agile, right? I was relating it to hiring a professional, right? But share simple stories and simple metaphors and tie them back to agility.
Thank you, Scott. Anyone else?
I would like to interrupt for a second.
Yes,
And
please.
while people are gathering their last questions or comments, I would like to run a quick poll because we're always learning from our audience. So if you would just take a minute and answer it, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah. So while you all are listening, are filling that out, thank you for doing so. If the rest of the panel, yeah. So resonating, how do we practice that? How do we?
Micah, you had some thoughts, Micah?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I think it just goes back to first principles of it's people. There's lots of stuff you can learn, like keyword backtracking, pacing people's analog, their tonality. Like you can mechanize the whole thing and like learn the skills of it.
Yeah,
And
I teach some.
I would. Sorry, say that again, Scott.
No, I was saying you're right. Like I teach tonality and mirroring and things like that in my program as well. All that is good for sure. What else, Micah?
I would say if you're not sure how to resonate with people, that would be a place before you become a Scrum Master to hone up your skills.
Yeah. If you're not a people person, you probably don't want to be a Scrum Master. It's probably a good idea. Ed or Amelia?
Yeah, I'm going to, who's not going to know exactly who I'm stealing this from. But the fact of the matter is the way that we respond to challenges or problems or conversations may be different from the person that we're speaking to. And so if we find that we're having a conversation with someone and we find that we ourselves are becoming, that we're not forming a link, that we're not forming connection, even that we might be getting irritated talking to that person. If we take a moment to be able to look at how we're approaching the problem and try switching our tactics. And I'm going to give an example of this in one very small way. When I'm speaking to someone that's very focused on selling a particular program, when someone is very focused in sales and comes from a background of sales, they're going to be someone that's not afraid of getting rejected. That is just going to keep pushing forward and forward and forward because this is what engages them. This is what gives them energy. I myself am very focused on quality assurance, and I am kind of avoidant towards problems, and I want to address each problem as it comes up. And so if I'm having a conversation with someone that's continually pushing, this is the way forward, this is what we do, this is the next action, and I'm finding that I'm not resonating with that person, it might be that we're both approaching the problem from a very positive direction, but the approach that we have is in conflict. And I'm not going to change that person's approach, particularly not in a 20-minute interview. But if I look at how I'm talking about things and if I adjust to be able to try and match someone else and provide a little bit of that similar energy back to them, that gives us more of an opportunity to resonate.
Yeah,
Mine
and
is my one I always use, which is be curious.
Hmm.
Go, Scott.
Yeah.
Sorry, I talked over you.
yeah, no, I was going to say this topic actually come up in the meetup that I was just speaking at of can you actually change someone's mind in 20 minutes? And I'm actually writing a book on it. It's called Switches. There are these mental switches in our mind. You can actually shift someone's beliefs in actually less than 20 minutes. So, right,
Mhm.
I've had 2 interviews in the last 2 years and I got job offers for both the highest offers I've ever gotten. I turned one down and I accepted another for 35% pay increase this year. And yeah, you can leverage neuroscience and human influence in a good way. We're being good, not evil with it. But yeah, there absolutely is a way to change someone's mind and convince them that you're the right candidate if that's what you want in 20 minutes, 100%. And even if you don't want to work for the organization, you should, because now you have another secret that I teach in my program, which is leverage.
So
I would add,
go ahead.
I would add on to that. Every job interview that I got offers for, which was a handful, I was solving problems in the interview for them and like offering them things. Like they were walking away with new thoughts and value. And then one of the results was I was seen as, oh my God, this guy's awesome. We want to scoop him up if we can.
Yeah, it's like a game of poker. Don't hide your cards.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. So I just want to spend 5 more minutes of everybody's time and just basically give each one of you basically a minute to do any kind of plug that you want to have. What are you into lately? If you want to plug the efforts that you're working with, feel free to do so. Who'd like to go first? And I encourage you to pass the buck once you're done.
And after that, we would invite everyone to participate in breakout rooms just for the networking.
Yeah.
Stick around.
Who wants to go first?
Not me.
I'm going to pick on Ed because I know his spiel's ready. He's got it together.
No, I'm happy to give a heads up to everyone that's been able to stick around. Thank you so much. Really great to be able to speak here tonight. I'm here on representation on behalf of the Job Hackers. We're an organization that over the last 3 years, we've offered over $2 million in free training, or $2.5 million in free training that prepares you not only for taking those first steps as a Scrum Master and getting that Scrum Master certification if you still haven't been able to get one. But we're trying to be able to remove some of the gatekeeping that can happen, the financial gatekeeping and otherwise, that can be able to prevent us from being able to move forward. So what we teach in our free class, that's 6 weeks, 2 classes a week, so 12 different classes, and is starting on October 5th. We offer not only an introduction and understanding of Scrum, but also understanding queuing and our particular cognitive biases, everything that we want to be able to, that we found lacking and should be taught in a MBA class or curriculum is something that we've introduced into this class. And while it is high level, being a part of this class even once has you as an alumni, where all of our alumni have the opportunity to be able to give back to our community. And we do such things as offering larger class extensions and programs where you can actually get practical Scrum experience in a means and motive where you already understand the product that you're doing because you're applying being part of a Scrum team to your job hunt. So these are things that we're working on right now. Our next class starts on the October 5th, as I said before. So I'm going to go ahead and post just a link to our participant page. You can also reach out to me. I've added my LinkedIn, Edward Michael Gordon, /Edward Michael Gordon. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about either Job Hackers or anything else about my own experience.
All right. Thank you, Ed.
And
you
I'll go
wanna-
ahead and pass the buck to Micah.
Okay, I don't have as much to offer. I wish I had known about like y'all three when I was going through my process, because I made it all up on my own. And like, had I known any of this, it would have saved me months. So I had a buddy who heard me going through a couple, like 3 friends heard me go through my whole journey this summer. They got really curious. I doubled my income over the summer. They were like, that's fucking amazing. How do we do that? So I wrote up a document. I just shared it in the thing. Please feel free to use it as much as you want. Feedback's always welcome. That's all I have to offer. And go do these other processes are much more well-formed. So
Yeah.
check them out.
All right, thank you, Micah. Passing the buck to,
Scott.
Cool. So I just shot a link in the text. This is my magnetic resume masterclass. I, like Micah, spent years perfecting what the highest performing resume is. And this is the result of that. It's unlike any resume you've ever seen. But hey, we got to stand out because competition is fierce. I do run the Agile Career Accelerator, but like, let's start with square one, right? Have a good resume, because no matter what strategy you use, you have to look good on paper. And especially if you don't have that 5 to 10 years of experience like I didn't have, you got to have a secret weapon. So that's the magnetic resume. Again, that's just part of the puzzle for how I've been able to get 2 offers in 2 years with 2 interviews. But you know, I teach neuroscience and human behavior in my Agile Career Accelerator, and the results have been astounding. I didn't realize I was sitting on such a gold mine last year when I started. We're a year in. Agile Career Accelerator is 13 months old now, so but it's been exciting to see the transformation and the lives change because of it. It's been some of the most fulfilling weeks of my life.
it's beautiful. Yeah,
52
thank you.
weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, saving the best for last, Amelia.
I don't really have anything to promote. If you want to find some Agile games, there's some cool ones on Agile Toy Box. Just connect with me on LinkedIn, connect with me on Twitter. I really love Agile humans. So
She's good. She's good people. Yeah, I've learned a ton of games from her. I've got a ton of games myself. Games is part of what I teach as well. And I don't think I mentioned, but I gave a 90% discount for using the code Bay Area Friends. So make sure you check that link here. I'll type it in again in case you missed it. But yeah, Agile games are really powerful. If I could share a quick story. I was coaching a mainframe team, and if anyone knows mainframe teams, they know that they're some of the toughest people to serve as change agents for, right? They're literally days away from retirement sometimes. But I was coaching a team, and probably the most pessimistic team that I've ever coached. And they weren't quite getting it, right? Agile is one of those, you know, red, blue, pill, blue thing. Like, you have to experience it for yourself. But how do you do that? Well, I like to use games to do that. And one of my favorite games is Deep Sea Adventure. Basically, everyone's diving for treasure. Amelia, I think you know this one. Yeah, you're sharing an oxygen tank. So everyone's competing against each other, diving for treasure. And the deeper you go, the more valuable the treasure is, but it actually costs more. So there's 4 different depth levels, and if you go all the way for the good stuff, right, you're probably not going to make it back to the surface. And since everyone's sharing oxygen, pretty much the first round everyone dies, which is hilarious, by the way. You know, unless someone on the team unless someone had a recent death in the family, then I don't recommend this game at all. But yeah, so we were playing this game. Some members had opted out. I guess they decided to work from home that day. I have a remote version now, but like the most pessimistic person on the team was a young product owner who is really like ambitious to become a leader in the organization or whatever, but just generally like not getting the whole agile thing, not buying in or anything. We play this game and she's like, she finally gets it. And her comment was, oh my gosh, the people who miss this have to play this game. Like that was like the light bulb moment for her. And that was probably the most thrilling game I ever played with that team or with any team. Yeah, that's the power of agile games. It's awesome.
Yeah. And I think, Amelia, actually, you do have something you could plug, right? Which
Oh,
is
Agile Games West. So
Correct.
November, I'll drop the link.
right.
It's an Agile Games conference here in the Bay Area and online. It's going to be 2 half days, a Friday night and a Saturday morning, so we can hit all the time zones. And we've got 4 fabulous Agile gamers who are going to come and share their games.
Awesome. Well,
Sure, yeah, I got to speak at that in person in the before times.
Yeah,
and it
you
was
Yeah,
did.
in the before times.
that's when
Yeah.
that's where I met
That's where we
you,
met.
Scott.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you all. Round of applause for our panelists. Really deep, fascinating discussion. I learned so much in it myself. For those of you who want to stick around, we're going to do a little bit of breakout, maybe do a little bit of networking if you'd like, or, talk about what transpired tonight. Alina, you want to stop recording?